Okay, perfect. The session is now recording. Good morning to you again, dear colleagues, and to all the participants, and to our facilitators, Mr. Wikas, Mr. Tapelo, and Ms. Rueda, for honoring our invite to facilitate this copyright, intellectual property, and open session publishing session. Welcome to the Research Capacity Development Unit at the University of Johannesburg. And as I've stated, my name is Lawrence Asani, and I am delighted to be your moderator for today's workshop. So before I begin, I would like to thank all the attendees for taking their time to join, and most importantly, our facilitators for taking their time and for preparing to giving this presentation. Before introducing our facilitators to you, I would like to go over a few housekeeping rules, of which I would like to believe most of you are aware of. If you do have any questions during the session, please raise your hands. You can raise your virtual hand, or you can type in the chat section or the Q&A session, and I will indicate to the presenter to address your question. And as I've stated in the beginning, that this session will be recorded and the presentation slides will be requested from our presenters so that we can upload this presentation recording and the slides to our Moodle communities for access to all our attendees. And please note that I will also be posting a feedback survey in the chat session. So we use this for our reporting purposes, and also this will ensure that you get a certificate of attendance for this workshop. So I kindly request all the attendees to please kindly fill it out and to also provide some kind words to our facilitators. Just before I begin, I would just like to go over our system. So we have a system, an RCD management system, as we will be moving away from this Teams session. So we've launched the management system. So this is the system that will streamline the research journey to register for workshops, book writing consultation, and also to stay updated in all our events going forward. So we're also having an onboarding sessions that will be happening from Wednesday, the 9th from 8 to 11 on MS Teams. So I'm sure most of you would have seen that we have advertised it on our Moodle communities, and we'll also be having a roadshow campus tour throughout all the campuses. So we'll be situated at the APK Library, APB, DFC. So on DFC, we will be there on Wednesday from 9 to 4, and as well as at APK on Thursday from 9 to 4, as well as at APB on Thursday from 9 to 4 as well. So if you do have any questions regarding our RCD management system, you can come and you can consult with our representative who will be situated at the library at the research common areas of the postgraduate students. If you have any issues regarding this management system, then you will be taken through the management system. And if you do have also any inquiries, please email our RCD inquiries at uj.ac.za. So before I begin again, can I just please allow me to introduce our facilitators just by reading through their bio. So Ms. Rueda Mohedin is an intellectual property officer at the University of Johannesburg Technology Transfer Office. She holds an honors degree in geology and is currently completing a master's in technology and innovation management at the University of Pretoria. Her role at UJ includes building relationship with internal and external stakeholders, intellectual property identification and protection, case management, and seeking opportunities to exploit UJ technologies. She will be taking you through the basis of intellectual property and the services TTO offers to support you in your research journey. And we also have our other facilitator, Mr. Wikas van Zyl. He is the manager of the UJ Press based in the library at the University of Johannesburg. He has an honors degree in publishing from the University of Pretoria and an MBA in digital transformation from the Johannesburg Business School. He has been involved in scholarly publishing since 2004 and is currently serving as a chair of the PASA Scholarly Committee. He is on the executive committee of the ASSAF National Scholarly Book Publishers Forum and a member of the Association of the University Presses Open Access Committee. He's passionate about open access publishing and is currently pursuing a DPhil in digital transformation, focusing on scholarly publishing. And lastly, we have our facilitator again, Mr. Thapelo Mashishi. He is the UJ Copyright Officer, holds a master's in English from the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa, a BA Honors in Publishing at the Wits University as well, a BA of Arts degree at the University of Wits, and a diploma in web and graphic design at the college campus in Johannesburg, and has worked at Maskell Milner Longman before joining the TWR. So without any further ado, I would like to hand over to Ms. Rueda, who will be beginning the session. Thank you so much.
To see. Oh God. Thanks, Lawrence. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen, but it's not yet in presenter mode. Can all the participants please just indicate with a thumbs up if you can see her screen? All right, perfect. It's now in presenter mode. You may proceed. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for that introduction, Lawrence. I don't think I need to say much more, but anyway, I'm Rueda. I'm from the university's Technology Transfer Office. So what is the Technology Transfer Office? We essentially located within the Research Development and Support Division. And our role is to manage all the university's intellectual property, facilitate its transfer thereof by identifying it, protecting it, identifying partners that can take it to market, and ensuring that we derive value from the intellectual property that our research develop. And another part of what we do is supporting entrepreneurship and innovation within the university. So that's essentially who the TTO is and what we do. And later at the end of our slides, I'll just sort of go through what services we offer. But the crux of today's presentation is intellectual property, what it is, and what you need to know about it during your research journey. So intellectual property essentially is any creation of the human mind that arises from any intellectual activity, be it in the scientific field, the literary field, the artistic field, the musical field, commercial field, mathematics field. So it's any creation of the human mind arising from intellectual activity. Intellectual property rights, then, is the legal protection afforded to that intellectual activity. So there can be intellectual property and intellectual activity, which then gets covered by specific intellectual property rights, depending on the type of intellectual activity that goes on. So those type of rights occur in the form of various legal instruments, one which is patents, another which is registered designs, a third which is copyright, which I think there's a whole separate presentation dedicated to copyright, plant breeders' rights, and trademarks. Those are registered intellectual property rights. Then you get unregistered intellectual property rights, which are still legal instruments, but don't undergo any formal registration. And those include trade secrets and know-how. So I'll go through each of those individually so that you can understand better what each one means, what each one intends to protect, and how it intends to protect them. So I'll begin with patents, which is a common, in research, a common tool which is used as a proxy for innovation and a determination of the newness and novelty of your work. So what do patents essentially do? Patent protects your invention or your product or your process or method or service or compound of a technical nature. So that's very, very important. It only protects things that are of a technical nature. And what does it do? Essentially, what it does is it gives you this monopoly. So if you came up with this technical invention, um, and you want to protect it, it says, okay, so a patent gives you the right to protect it by allowing you to stop others from copying you. But to note that it's time limited, so patents only last 20 years and it's territorial. So you only have protection in the countries in which you file for protection in. So if you get a patent, it says, okay, you can stop others from copying your work, but what do you have to give up in return? You have to give up a full disclosure. So you have to describe your invention in detail, which then becomes public knowledge. So you have to give up that. You have to disclose fully your work. And in return, you get this time limited monopoly in a specific territory, provided that you maintain your patent by paying yearly renewals. So that's essentially a patent explained. But not everything qualifies for a patent. There's obviously some requirements that would need to be met in order for you to get a patent granted. So it's not that, okay, I filed for a patent and now I got a patent. It has to undergo certain examination steps before it can qualify as a patent. So step one, it has to be patentable subject matter. So you can't just patent anything. And how we consider that is we look at things that are not patentable, such as, for example, discoveries of existing minerals, scientific theories, mathematical methods, methods of presentation, methods of playing games or board games, uh, presentation of information. I think I covered that. And then you'll see I have copyrightable material or software in a question mark, because software per se, which is code essentially on its own, is not patentable subject matter. However, if software is considered within a larger system whereby code is integrated to produce some sort of technical effect in a larger system, it could be considered for a patent. So software is a bit tricky and is looked at on a case-by-case basis, but code itself is covered under copyright protection. So the moment you develop or write a piece of code, it's automatically protected via copyright protection. And within the context of a patent, it would have to be considered how that code is used in a larger context and what effect that produces in order to determine whether it's patentable or not. So that's so number one, it has to be patentable subject matter before anything else. And then there's three main requirements. The first one being novelty. Your work has to be new. Nothing that you've done has to exist out there. Before you conduct your research, you sort of do what's referred to as state of the art search, meaning you look at what's existing literature, existing publications, existing web applications, existing patents. So your work can't exist anywhere else, be it in the form of written work or oral presentations. It must be new. It mustn't exist anywhere else. So that's novelty, which is kind of black and white. It's either new or it's not new. The second requirement being inventive step. Inventive step is a bit more trickier than novelty. Your work has to be unobvious or surprising. To someone that has a similar skill set to you, they look at your work, they'll be like, okay, wow, I didn't think of that. So your work has to be surprising. It mustn't be like, okay, I took this paper and edited it and now I got this. So inventive step is a bit more tricky to overcome during examination. But I mean, if your work is unobvious, then you would pass that criteria. And the third one, your work has to be useful. There has to be some application for it in the world, which is an easy sort of criteria to overcome. Then you'd see I put in yellow publications. So there's often this notion that it's either you patent or you publish, and the two are mutually exclusive. And that's an incorrect misconception. Patenting and publications are not mutually exclusive. And, and as researchers and academics, there's a strong focus on publications, and you want to get more publications to, increase your researcher stature, and that sort of go up the publication ladder and that sort of thing. But it doesn't mean that if you patent, you can't publish. What you need to understand is, remember I explained that novelty requirement. So if you publish your work, you've then destroyed your own novelty. So if your work is now in the public domain, and then you come to the TTO and say, okay, I think I want to file a patent, you can't do that because your work is now already in the public domain. You've published it. So be wary of, that's why the TTO exists. Come to us and say, I think there's a novelty in this work, and it would merit patent protection. Let us have a look at it and see. And let us guide you through the steps of obtaining that protection, or obtaining what we refer to as a priority date, which then cements your work as being first in the world before you publish it. So it's managing the timelines and understanding what benefits what. So it doesn't mean if you patent, you're not going to publish. But if you publish, then you can't patent, because you've essentially destroyed your own novelty by putting your work out there in the public domain. So, just consult with the TTO to understand what the best steps are based on where you are with your research. So that's important. And then also authorship and inventorship. When you publish, you have authors on your paper. Generally, if you have any contribution to the paper, you are allowed to be listed as an author from 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. An inventor, however, is someone on the patent that appears, your name will appear as an inventor, but you had to have had some form of intellectual contribution to that work. So if you were working under supervision, and your supervisor told you, okay, we're in the lab setting, take these samples, bake it in the oven for 2 hours, then crush it and sieve it, that sort of routine work that you conducted under supervision, and you had no intellectual contribution to that work, you just followed instructions, you won't be listed as an inventor. And if you are, and you haven't had any intellectual contribution, legally that patent can be deemed null and void. So it's very important to distinguish between an inventor and an author on a publication. So yeah, I think that's patents. It's very technical. There's a lot of legal aspects that need to be considered, but it has a lot of merit. If you do get a granted patent, it gives you the right to stop others from copying you, and essentially buys you time to commercialize your invention and get it to market as quickly as possible, without others sort of trying to stop you from doing that during that time. Then I move on to the next type of intellectual property protection, which is copyright, which then covers a work not of a technical nature. So, for example, literary written works, musical works, artistic works, broadcasts, computer programs. Copyright is an automatic right. So, unlike patents, where you have to formally go to an intellectual property office in a specific country. So, for example, in South Africa, you would have to go to the CIPC to file for patent protection. Copyright exists automatically, provided your work has been reduced to a material form. So anything in your head is not covered by copyright. But the moment it's a tangible form, the moment you've started drawing your artistic work on a piece of paper, it's covered by copyright protection. The moment you've written the words for your book, it's covered by copyright protection. So it's an automatic right, provided it's been reduced to a material, tangible form. And copyright gives you the right to reproduce your work, to publish your work, to perform your work, broadcast your work, and others would then have to acknowledge or get permission from you to do the same. It's important to note that with copyright, the author is the creator. So the person who wrote the code is the creator and owner of that code. So if you sort of task a third party to write code for you during app development, for example, it's important to note that they own that code and you need to get permission from them to then include it in the app or you use the code. Um, if it's a work of art, the person who drew that is the owner and the author and the creator of that work. So that's an important part to note. Where patents last 20 years, copyrights have a much longer lifespan and last up to 50 years after an author has passed away. But I think there's a separate presentation on copyright, so I'm not going to go into much further detail. I just sort of touched the tip of copyright protection. And then I think it's prudent for us to look at copyright in the context of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is here. It's here to stay. We've been using it. And how does that impact copyright protection? So when looking at AI doesn't just exist on its own and it doesn't just, get material out of itself. AI pulls from existing data that's available to it. So the AI is trained with whatever material it's given, so for example, ChatGPT, which is an open access public AI, will then draw from existing data that's available in the public domain. It will process that data and then give you an output. That output then is based on this original existing data. So who owns the data? Did the AI have right to use the data? So it's all of those considerations that need to be considered when looking at the output. Has that original data been acknowledged and referenced accordingly, or are we just appropriating data without permission? So legal instruments and legislation has not yet been able to catch up with AI. So we're lagging in terms of having that legal framework to manage data sets and outputs produced by AI. So that's just sort of a side consideration that you need to look at when using AI tools during your research. Then we've covered patents, we've covered copyrights. Now we move on to a third type of intellectual property right, known as registered designs. Designs are a type of intellectual property used to cover things that have solely an appeal to the eye. Basically, how things look are covered by design protection. So the shape of something, the features in terms of colors, in terms of, for example, a water bottle could be protected by a design registration. The shape of a desk, the shape of a chair could be covered by a design registration. So it's something that purely appeals to the eye, how it looks. In South Africa, there's two types of design registrations. There's a functional design and an aesthetic design. A functional design is based on how something looks. However, it has a specific function based on its shape. So if you consider a water bottle, for example, if the water bottle has an indentation, a deep indentation to the left side of it, for example, to make it easier to hold. So that shape has a function also, then it could qualify for a functional design. And the only requirement is it must be new. So it mustn't exist anywhere else. So it's a new shape, a new form. And then you apply for design registration and then you protect it for that shape to then produce it through an industrial process. And that protection for functional design lasts 10 years. For an aesthetic design, which is purely based on how something looks, its pattern, its shape, its configuration, it lasts for up to 15 years. Similar with patents, design protection is territorial, so you only have protection in the countries in which you file for protection. And it also gives you the similar rights that patents give you. It allows you to stop others from making, using, selling, or importing your design. I mean, there's design covers a myriad of things. It can cover furniture, it can cover clothing, it can cover packaging, it can cover bottling, it can cover, a whole crockery, cutlery, a whole wide range of things are covered by design protection. And generally, in the case of universities, very relevant in sort of the faculty of art, design, architecture, where they come up with industrial design content. Then I think one of the most commonly known forms of intellectual property is trademarks. I mean, we see it all around us. You'd see the picture on my screen with commonly used trademarks that we all easily will be able to identify. What are trademarks? Trademarks essentially are badges of origin that serve to distinguish your goods and services from other people's goods and services. So it's a unique logo, sign, word, letter, shape, number, pattern, or color put together in a specific way that you will use to build your brand identity and distinguish your brand from other brands. So inherently, trademarks gain their reputation by use. The only way you know or can identify these trademarks is because they're so actively and commonly used. It's important to note, though, trademarks don't always have to be registered. Some companies or some, for example, early startups or small SMMEs create a logo and use it without registering it, which is fine. It's legal to do that. However, if someone copies you, it might be difficult to to take action against that person because you haven't formally registered your trademark. So it's important to then register your trademark so that you have that legal protection, and then you can stop others from copying your work. And the main part with trademarks is for registering it is you don't want people to have a confusingly similar logo. So, for example, the Coca-Cola logo, maybe somebody can use turn it upside down, or so call it keka kela or something like that, and put it in a bottle, and then you look at it and at first glance it looks like Coca-Cola, and you pick it up and you buy it thinking it's Coca-Cola, but when you drink it, it doesn't taste the same. So the company that does that is infringing on Coca-Cola's trademark because they confused you. It looks so similar to the Coca-Cola logo, but it's not. So Coca-Cola can then go take up proceedings against that company. So with trademarks, it's important to note that if you come up with something that's confusingly similar to an existing trademark, you could possibly be infringing that trademark. Then it's important to note that trademarks exist in classes. So Coca-Cola covers the beverage class, for example. Not necessarily clothing. So if you print a hoodie with Coca-Cola, does Coca-Cola have a trademark in that class? So there's different classes. For example, furniture, clothing, beverages, scientific instruments, cooling instruments. So trademarks are very class specific. Doesn't mean you have a trademark, you can do anything anyway. And it's a very, very strong form of intellectual property, where other forms of intellectual property, like I said, patents are 20 years, designs 10 and 15 years. Trademarks can exist forever. Provided you renew it every 10 years, they can exist forever. So it's a very strong form of intellectual property. So Coca-Cola, for example, depends on their trademark as a form of intellectual property protection to drive their brand awareness and build and maintain their reputation, as well as trade secret. So if they, for example, filed a patent when they started Coke, everybody would have it 20 years later. So they kept their formulation a trade secret purely by means of keeping it secret, and that's how they built their brand. So to sort of sum up what I've said to you to bring it home, that intellectual property is not this random pie in the sky idea that, is applicable to academics and we don't really see it in our lives. It exists everywhere. You might not be always aware of it, but it exists everywhere. So if you consider the simple thing like this syrup, a cough syrup bottle, we just discussed trademark. So the Benylin trademark would then be covered by trademark protection based on how it looks, the font, the blue and red, the line in between, that's the logo. Um, the inside booklet or leaflet that you get with in medicine bottles would be covered by copyright protection. There could also be some trademark protection if there's any images involved. The design and shape of the bottle could lend itself to design registration. The actual syrup could be a patented formulation or the method to produce the syrup, for example, the extraction method from a certain plant to produce the syrup could be covered by patent protection, or it could be a formulation protected through trade secret. But in the medical field, that's a bit trickier because you have to disclose the ingredients. The lid of the bottle could be a certain shape that has those child temper protection, uh, temper proof mechanism that could then be protected by a patent or even a design. But maybe the ridges allow for a certain way to open the bottle. So a simple thing like cough syrup could lend itself to almost all forms of intellectual property based on what and how you want to protect it. So just to bring it home that these things exist all around us and they used to leverage commercial benefit. So if Benylin filed for the lid that does a certain things and filed for patent protection, they'd stop Merck or whoever, any other pharmaceutical companies from doing the same through their patent protection. Other companies would have to license that from them, and then they would make money that way. So intellectual property is a means of leveraging your intellectual activity, your brain work, as well as the monetary investment you put in to get to that, to derive at some sort of commercial, societal, economic impact and benefit. So this is just so that's intellectual property in general. In South Africa, intellectual property rights are governed, especially intellectual property rights arising from research that's conducted in public universities is governed by the Intellectual Property Rights Act, which serves to ensure that intellectual property developed in an institution such as the University of Johannesburg is identified, properly protected, and then developed and used to create impact in South Africa and the world at large. So I'm not going to go into the details of the act at this point, but essentially it exists to govern IP generated from publicly financed universities, and identifies you as someone who comes up with the IP as an intellectual property creator, and by law says that you allowed to share in any benefit that the university, any financial benefit that the university makes by making use of your IP. So if we license your IP and get some sort of revenue from it, then you stand to share in that revenue. The university itself has an intellectual property policy, which is heavily then compliant with the IPR Act, which says that all IP developed in the course and scope of your studies or employment is owned by the university. So that's that's important to note, that IP is that you develop during the course and scope of your studies is owned by the university. And you as an IP creator, as a researcher that comes up with new intellectual property, have an obligation to disclose any new IP that you feel has the potential for technology transfer, has a commercial potential, to disclose that IP to the Technology Transfer Office via what we call a disclosure process, which we then will take you through and then discuss your work, what merits it has, how can you protect it, etc. Yeah, I think I explained this. IP developed in the course and scope of your studies is owned by the university. If you develop anything in your own time using your own resources that's completely unrelated to your studies, then that's owned by you and the university has no stake in it. So if, for example, you conducting your research, you're doing a PhD in lithium ion batteries, for example. And in your own time, you've developed this musical instrument or this piano that does some amazing things, completely unrelated to lithium ion batteries in your own time, not using university resources, then that's your IP, which we can help you commercialize if you approach us to, but we don't own it. The research conducted on the lithium ion battery is owned by the university. So that's just an important distinction to make. And then, yeah, like I said, the TTO exists to support you through this journey. So the moment you contact us and you say, as a researcher, I've identified something that I feel, has potential to make impact in a bigger way or further research in other ways, we take you through a disclosure process, which we then evaluate in terms of IP opinion. Is it really protectable? Market assessment. Is it relevant to the market? What's the potential to commercialize and essentially commercialize it? It's a process. I'm not going to go through the detail. If you want to engage further, you contact us and we'll take you through the process, but it's not a long process. We take a week to sort of do a pre-screening, get relevant information if we don't have it, and then assess in the next 3 weeks to see, what action needs to be taken. The support services that our office offers, I think I've been through number one. We identify IP, we conduct prior art searches to determine the novelty of your work, market assessments, and then consequent commercialization. So develop, if your work warrants a business case or business plan, or some techno-economic feasibility, we then assist with that and consequently licensing that IP. We've recently launched incubation services at the TTO. So if you have a business, so apart from your research, if you have a business that you, or startup or whatever that you want mentorship, assistance with in terms of coaching, networking, we've got a maker space where there's 3D printers, sewing machines, engraving machines, a whole lot of things that could assist you in your entrepreneurship journey. So apart from the intellectual property, business, student entrepreneurship, we have incubation services that you can apply for and then go through the incubation program. We also have funding opportunities at the TTO, specifically for your research work. So if you're conducting generally postgrad research, master's, PhD level, where you've come to a certain point where you need funding to further develop your work or further, advance where you at, we have a few funding opportunities available. So yeah, that's us. We are not on campus. We sit just off campus next to the McDonald's is the easiest way to explain it. And we sort of have an open door policy. You're welcome to visit the TTO at any point. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Rueda, for that insightful and very insightful presentation. I don't know if there is any questions from from the participants, if there's any questions for Ms. Rueda before we proceed to our next facilitator. Okay. I don't know if you saw that question, Ms. Rueda.
Yeah, is the TTO open to the public? So generally, Our mandate is to support UJ staff and students. So that's our core mandate. If there is capacity, so it's a very big if there is capacity, and for example, SMMEs approach us and we can help, then we do. But it's not, to answer your question, we're not open to the public. We meant to serve UJ staff and students.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying on that question. Is there any other question from the participants or the attendees? Or Ms. Rueda, before we can proceed. John, just a thank you message following up the question.
No problem. Okay, I think.
So at this point, I don't see any questions. So once again, I would like to express our appreciation to you, Ms. Rueda, for facilitating and for honoring our invite and providing expertise on such an insightful topic. And I think everybody has certainly gained much on intellectual property and definitely I'm sure people will be visiting the TTO further. I'm sure as you stated that you have an open door policy, so I'm sure everybody knows where you are situated now. And I'm sure if they do have any questions further, they will probably visit your office. And thank you again for giving us such an insightful presentation. We really appreciate you. And thank you for supporting the research capacity development.
No problem, anytime.
Okay, thank you. So in that regard, I would also like to now hand over to Mr. Vickers, as I have introduced him in the beginning, that he is the manager of the UJ Press. So without any further ado, Mr. Vickers Wenzel, you may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to share a bit about open access publishing. So I'm Vickers van Zyl and I'm the manager at UJ Press. We're an open access press and we have about 21 open access journals, of which 16 are Diamond Open Access. We've got about 150 titles open access online on our UJ Press site. So this will be focused on open access publishing. But just to introduce you to open access publishing, what it is and what are the things you have to consider. So firstly, open access means making research and publications freely and immediately available online without cost or access barriers. So open access publishing makes research publications available freely to the audience without financial barriers. Then the goals of open access is to firstly increase the visibility and accessibility of research, opening up to a wider audience, but then secondly, also reducing the financial barriers to access to publishing and publications. So that means both for authors and for readers. Publishers want to reduce barriers. Some of the benefits of open access publishing, firstly, increased visibility and impact. And that's one of the most important advantages of open access publishing. Your research is internationally available then freely to a very wide audience, whereas prescribed or subscription-based journals and non-open access titles are only available to a limited audience. Secondly, the accelerated discovery. People can more quickly and easily find your research because it's available on more platforms and more discovery platforms, specifically also because of the way that open access publications are structured. Then thirdly, you will be able to comply with your funder mandates. Sometimes when you receive funding, they would mandate you to make your research available freely. And then lastly, public engagement. So your research is now available to a broader audience, including the general public, whereas with closed publications, it would only be available to a scholarly or a higher education market. Then there are different types of open access journals that I'll quickly discuss. So firstly, there will be fully open access journals. And that means that all of the journal articles on there are freely available to download and read. And that is also called gold open access journals. Then there are hybrid journals, and that means that some of the articles are open access and some of them are paid for behind a paywall. And you will then only have access to the open access publication unless your library subscribes to that journal, then you'll have access to all of the articles. Then lastly, you'll have your closed or subscription journals where none of the information is open access and the journal articles are only accessible by libraries and individuals who prescribe to that journal. Then there are different types of open access publishing. So firstly, there's Diamond Open Access Publishing, which is the main and the most popular type of open access publishing, and also the type of open access publishing that everybody's pushing for. That means there's no charges to either the authors or the readers. The second type is Gold Open Access, and that's at the moment the most prevalent one, but everybody wants to move towards Diamond Open Access Publishing. And Gold Open Access means that there's immediate open access to publications, but the authors need to pay an article processing charge or a book processing charge. So there's always a fee to be paid by the author to have their books made available open access. Then there's Green Open Access. That is where authors self-archive their research outputs. So firstly, they would publish it in a journal, and then with the journal's permission, make it available on a repository. So if the journal gives permission, that article will be available on a repository in open access format. But like I said, only with the permission of the journal article or with the journal publisher. Then there's Platinum Open Access, where there's no author fees and the origination costs are covered through volunteer work, donations, subsidies, and grants. Lastly, we've got Bronze Open Access, where information is made available free to read on the publisher's website, usually not downloadable. You'll have to be on the website and then be able to read it on the site, but also then not with an explicit open license. Just a bit more about self-archiving. There are various places where you can self-archive your work if it's been published as open access. So firstly, your institutional repository. All research outputs at UJ has to be deposited into the institutional repository. Secondly, you can self-archive on ResearchGate, academia.edu, Archive, SSRN, which is for social science outputs, PubMed Central, which is for biomedical and life sciences outputs. Always make sure that your publisher agrees to self-archiving. Usually publishers would list it on their site to say if they allow self-archiving. But what self-archiving does as well is just increase the reach and access to your research outputs. Then a short note on copyright. Usually with open access publishing, the copyright stays with the author, unlike with traditional publishing or commercial publishing, where the publisher usually takes over the copyright. So that's one of the main distinctions. Then there are a number of Creative Commons licenses, and I think Tapela will speak more in detail about these, where you can specify how your copyright can be used. I'm not going to elaborate. I'll leave that to Tapela to elaborate on, but usually your work will then have a Creative Commons license, which will tell people how they're allowed to use your work. So the fact that it's open access doesn't mean that anybody can use it in any way that they want to. You still have terms on which information can be used. Then with open access publishing, it's very important to know where you will receive funding from if you have to pay book processing charges or article processing charges. So some of the sources of funding include, firstly, your department or the faculty that you're in, sometimes have a publication fund or research funds that they can make available to fund APCs or book processing charges. Secondly, the library has a APC and a BPC fund where you can apply to, and if it's approved, they will pay for the APCs and the BPCs. There is something called transformational agreements, where libraries have partnered with publishers to include article processing charges and book processing charges in their prescribed fee, so that authors can publish freely in those journals if the library has a transformational agreement with the publisher. So go to your faculty librarian and find out which journals the library has transformational agreements with, and then you can publish in those journals without paying APCs. Then there's also research grants. So if you do an application for your research for a grant, in many cases they include publication funding, where you will then get funding to publish. The NRF also makes funding available for publications. And then on the publishers and the journal editors side, they can also apply for funding, which would assist them to offer publication without APCs or BPCs. So different sources of that funding is EIFL. EIFL made funding available for open access publishers and journal publishers to be able to offer publication services without charging authors article processing charges. COPEN has a funding mechanism available. Open Books Collective, Path to Open, and Subscribe to Open also have funding available. Then it's important to know where to get open access publications. So the main sources for open access publications, firstly, is the Directory of Open Access Journals. And the DOAJ also acts as a quality assurance mechanism for journals to ensure that these journals are open access and they are not predatory, that they prescribe to all the ethical guidelines for journal publishers, and also that they adhere to international best practices. So if you find a journal on the DOAJ, you will know that this is a legitimate journal that publishes legitimate research outputs. The same for books. So there's the Directory of Open Access Books, and it's also a quality insurance mechanism. All books that are in the Directory of Open Access Books are double-blind peer-reviewed and adhere to the DHET requirements as well for quality research outputs. So those two are the main sources for open access publications, but you can also consult OAPEN, PubMed Central, OpenAlex, your individual university's open access platform, and your university's institutional repository would contain all of the open access publications published by researchers at that institution. Just to be about universities' open access platforms, many universities have open access journal platforms where they host journals that are open access and accessible then to people free of charge. Then considerations when you publish open access. Firstly, funding requirements. Make sure what the article processing charge or book processing charge is that the publisher will require for making your book open access. Usually they state it on their site, or alternatively, they can provide a cost estimate to say for this book, it will cost X to make it available open access, just so that you're sure that you can raise that funding before getting into the publication process. Because it would be very sad if you get to the publication agreement where they say, yes, we're willing to publish your book, but then you don't have the funding available for it to be published. Secondly, make sure that you retain the copyright. As mentioned, most open access publishers will let you keep the copyright to your work, which is important. If you're publishing your thesis or extracts from your thesis, it's always important to get permission from the university. As mentioned in the previous presentation, if you do research here, UJ has copyright of that research. If you want to publish it elsewhere, make sure you get permission from the university to use that material and to publish it on a platform. Then third-party material. If you have third-party material in your research, make sure you've got the permission from that copyright owner to, one, use it, and secondly, to publish it under the license that you want it to be published. Tapelo might mention the CC BY Share Alike license, which says you have to share the copyright in the same way that you have received it. So if the copyright in something exists, it's a CC BY NC/ND, for instance, you have to publish your work also as a CC BY NC/ND in the same way. So even though you agree to make your things open access, the people whose material you use in your research might not agree to it. So make sure you have the necessary permissions for all of the third-party material that you use in your research and that you have those permissions in writing, because the publisher will also require that. Make sure, for instance, images and things like that, that you do have the rights to, one, use it, and secondly, use it as open access. Then CC licenses, as mentioned, there are a lot of varieties of the CC licenses that would say how people can use your material and in which ways. And then, as mentioned, the costs, know your costs. The funding requirements, they go hand in hand. But for instance, some funders would say, we would give you funding, but then we require you to publish open access. Or they might say the opposite and say, we give funding, but then you may not publish open access. So make sure what those requirements are from your funder. And then, very important, with open access publishing, make sure you use a journal that's reputable and who publishes very good quality research outputs. There are various measures to check for quality and to measure and make sure that these are not predatory publishers. If a publisher offers you a very quick turnaround time, that's an immediate red flag. You know that they're predatory. If they ask you money before even looking at the article, then you must also know that they're a predatory publisher. If they confirm that they will publish your article upon payment, that is also a very, very big red flag. At UJ Press, our main deciding factor for publishing research outputs is the quality of the research, not whether the author has funding available. So just make sure, and you will also get a feeling, this is a good journal, this is a bad journal. Do research on them just to make sure that you only publish with reputable journals, because it will also impact your reputation as a researcher. Then also making sure that your open access research is accessible. So just having it in PDF format is good, but you can also check, does the journal publish in more than one format to make it available for a broader audience? So for instance, if you publish in EPUB format, it can be transformed into an audio version that will be available for people with disabilities. Make sure that they make it available in XML or HTML format, which makes it even more accessible. And check also that they have, or if they have, the option of submitting data sets. So that's something that's very useful. You can make your data sets available open access if you have the rights and the permission in your ethical clearance as well. And that makes your research much more usable to a much wider audience. Lastly, going hand in hand with the journal reputation is the ethics. Make sure that that journal or that book publisher adheres to international best practices according to ethics. There's COPE that gives certain guidelines on what things that publishers and journals have to adhere to in terms of being ethical. For yourself, make sure that you have got the ethical clearance from your university to publish the research, just to ensure that once published, this research can reach the world in an ethical and sustainable manner. I'm going to open up to questions. If there are any questions, please raise your hand and I'll be ready to answer.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Wiekes van Zyl. Really appreciate your insights on the open access publishing. And I'm glad that most of the participants here have gained insights on what is needed when it comes to open access publishing. If there is any questions, please kindly raise your hand or you can type it in the chat box so that I may indicate it to our facilitator. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think I did a good job, so there's no question, but please always reach out to me. You have my contact details. I will also be sharing the presentation. Oh, there's a question.
Yeah, there's a question. Can you see it from a side? Can I read it out for you?
Yes.
Okay, please.
Yes, I can. So you can read it if you want, yes.
Okay, so it says, how do you publish in an open access journal?
Yes. So firstly, you would have to go to the journal. you have to identify a journal that you want to publish in, and then check how their open access model works. So each journal would have a different model. If it's a diamond open access model, you'll be able to publish without paying an APC. If it's a gold open access journal, you'll be able to publish, but you'll have to pay an APC. And all of those would depend on you successfully going through the review process and your article being accepted for publication.
Okay, perfect. I hope you answered the Chikao Dili. There's a question again by Shane. It says, thank you for your presentation, because are there any initiatives that help to encourage students or staff to publish?
Yeah. So I'm very thankful that UJ Press is able to offer publication services for both staff and students in a variety of formats. We have a variety of publication models available for authors, and we try to work together with authors to make sure that we can publish works sustainably. So one, people can submit their manuscripts to UJ Press for consideration. We publish a variety of publications and journals. So we've got a number of journals in a variety of disciplines, and each of them have their own criteria. But for UJ Press also, we have the UJ Press list, which is for research outputs. And then we've got the Who Press list, which is for more general publications. And we also are very often involved in workshops to assist authors and researchers at the university to make sure that they package their research correctly for submission to journals and to publishers. And we assist with that process, helping them to improve their articles, helping them to improve their manuscripts so that it's publication ready. And all of these can be submitted to UJ Press. So like I mentioned, just scholarly research outputs as well as general titles. The general titles goes under the Who Press list. And there we've published poetry, we've published drama text, fiction, novels, things like that. So a variety of texts that we publish. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. There's another question. It says, do publication have to be academic?
Yes, I answered that question now. It doesn't have to be academic. It can be either scholarly research outputs or general titles.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, are there sort of like any advantages or disadvantages of publishing in an open access publishing?
Yeah, so I spoke about the benefits, which says your research will be available much wider and a much broader platform than closed research would be. One of the disadvantages is that there would not be any royalties for your book publication if for the electronic versions. For instance, at UJ Press, the electronic versions are open access, but the print versions are still for sale, and there can be royalties on those sales, but it will not be the amount of royalties that you receive at a trade or a traditional publisher. But if your main aim is to make your research available as widely as possible, then open access is the way to go. Very rarely do researchers have a mainly commercial purpose for their research.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for clarifying that. I don't know, maybe if I can ask, would it be better in a context of sciences or humanities, sort of like, let's say, natural sciences or social sciences to publish in an open access channel? Which one would be more preference to have open access publishing?
Yeah. So the sciences usually publish in journals, and their main aim is to have research made available as quickly as possible to as wide an audience as possible. And very often those are open access journals that have the faster turnaround time, because closed journals often have longer processes. And that's not because of quality, that's because of commercial considerations. The social sciences more often tend to publish book publications, edited volumes, and monographs that would more often not be open access as much, because many of those titles also have a general audience. So many of those authors feel this has a more general audience and we want to make it available in Exclusive Books and Takealot and all those platforms, and sometimes have a commercial consideration also for their titles, but it depends on the author.
Thank you. Thank you so much for clarifying on that, Mr. Vickers. Really, really appreciate it so much. I hope our participants have learned a thing or two there based on open access publication. I really appreciate you so much for those insights. And thank you once again for giving this insightful presentation. And if there is no further questions from any participants, I don't see any hand raised. Then we may probably move on to Mr. Thapelo, who is a UJ Copyright Officer. So Mr. Thapelo, without further ado, you may proceed. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Lawrence. Let me share my presentation. Let me see if I can
Okay, thank you.
find it here. Where is it now? Oh, there it is. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, I can see it, not yet in presenter mode. Can all the participants just indicate with a thumbs up if they can see it? Yes, perfect. I think we can all see it. Thank you so much. You may proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, as Rueda already mentioned with the presentation on patents and intellectual property, copyright is a subset of intellectual property. And as such, it falls under the university's IP policy. You also find copyright as part of that. Okay, I'll be focusing on, I'll be basically explaining what is copyright and author-publisher relationships, and also I'll be touching also going over some of the stuff that Vickers mentioned on copyright, but mainly focusing on the library's role in that in open access. And also why open access. Okay, basically what is copyright? I think before I go into the definitions and copyright, I just want to make sure that I'm not sure, some of you might be aware that we have a new Copyright Amendment Act that is in the process that's been discussed, or I think over the last few years, there's been discussions about changing the Copyright Act because it's very old and a lot of people feel that it is outdated. A large part of it don't cover things like the internet and the digital age, basically. So there's been discussions around creating a new Copyright Act. There has been a Copyright Amendment Act. However, it has not been passed into law by the president. So we've been waiting, we've been going back and forth, and almost every time it headed over to the president, it gets challenged, and then there are other further discussions. The reason I'm mentioning that is that once that act is passed as law, the majority of what I'm going to say to you here will be obsolete. So it will no longer be applied. So just make sure that we keep an eye on what is going on around the Copyright Amendment Act. Once it becomes a law, then we only have to update all our documentation for the university. Okay, basically the copyright is the right of intellectual property which allows the author or owner of a literary, written, or musical work to obtain for a limited time the exclusive right to produce, distribute, perform, or display, or license their work. The owner also receives the exclusive right to produce or license the production of derivatives of his or her work. For example, with things like translations, and if somebody wants to turn a book or a novel into a film, the copyright owner will be entitled to share royalties in that as well. And so the South African Copyright Act is from 1978, so you can see that it's very old. And it was amended, but it also amended in the early 90s, 1994, I think, 1998, I think. But it is outdated and it's been reviewed at the moment. What are the inherent requirements? What kind of works are eligible for copyright protection? Literary, musical, and artistic works, cinematic films, sound recordings, broadcasts, published editions, and computer programs. As when I mentioned, copyright is not registered, so you don't need to register your copyright except for cinematographic films. So for any work of film that you produce or part of that you created, those are the only ones you register in South Africa. And also, originally, it is required of the author to create a work through the application of his or her skills and creativity, labor, and efforts. And also, it has been in material form. But through, I already mentioned, it cannot be an idea you have in your head. If you are discussing as an idea that you say, for example, a book that you want to write and you discuss with somebody, you will not have any rights if they go ahead and use your work in their own work, because it has to be written down in material form, either record it or write it down somewhere. And how long does copyright work? In South Africa, the duration of copyright is the life of the author plus 50 years from the end of the year in which the author dies. When the copyright expires, the work falls in the public domain and may be freely used and exploited by anyone. And how do I get copyright in my book? In South Africa, one does not register copyright apart from the films. Copyright arises automatically. So once you have something written form, even if you just had a note in your book somewhere and you can prove that it is your work, there is automatic copyright in it. You don't have to do anything to protect your work, as it's automatically protected. But if someone copied your work and you challenge them, you have to prove in court that you are the owner of the copyright. I think some of the things, especially with the internet, people usually assume that they don't see the copyright side around a lot of publications on the internet, that their work is in the public domain. You should always check first before assuming that the work there's no copyright. There's always copyright in most of the works that are available publicly, even though you don't see the copyright, anybody asserting their copyright of those works. And what is copyright infringement? The owner of the copyright is the only one who can authorize the following in respect to their work: reproduce in any manner or form, publish it, perform it in the public, broadcast it, transmit it in a diffusion service, or adapt it. Anyone who performs any of these actions without permission in respect of the work has infringed copyright. Okay, and the Copyright Act also has a provision called fair dealing, and this allows for a certain amount of copying or reuse of somebody's work without getting permission from them. This is for research purposes. You may make a copy for the purpose of research or private study, or for personal or public use in terms of fair dealing. The student may not make multiple copies for other students. Each student must make his or her own copies within the legal limits. For fair dealing only covers research the use for yourself. You cannot, for example, if you access one of our databases or journals online, you can use them as you see fit. Or if you have other journals or books that you also have legal access to, you can use it for yourself, but you are not allowed to make copies and share with other people without clearing copyright with the copyright owner. So it only covers personal use. It does not cover making multiple copies. And before I get to the other publications, I think also another part of copyright is multiple copies usually falls under for teaching purposes. For example, a lecturer might have an illustration or a paper that they want to share with students in class, and they make multiple copies of that to share with the students. To do that, even though it is part of teaching and learning, you still need to clear copyright for that. You cannot just make multiple copies with first clearing copyright. Okay, in the traditional publishing sense, the author signs a contract with the publisher, and this gives them an exclusive license to publish your work. But if sometimes most publishers, especially with traditional copyright outside of open access, most publishers will want you to assign your copyright to them. And what does this mean? It copyrights the body of rights which include the right of the publisher in a book in a certain language or for a certain period of time. Okay, it means that the copyright, you as the author are no longer the owner of the copyright in your work, but the publisher now is the owner of the copyright, and they license that work on your behalf. And also they manage the exploitation of your work according to the rights you grant over to the publisher. And this can differ from publisher to publisher. So whenever you sign a copyright license with the publisher, make sure you are very clear about what rights you're signing. Are you signing all of them, or do you still have certain amounts of rights that is pertaining to your work? Because most of times authors are surprised that they have so very little control once they've signed a contract with the publisher that they cannot actually even reuse and share their own work. Okay, that because sometimes it could mean complete ownership of all the rights in the bundle. An education publisher, for example, may publish a textbook in several languages and territories and adapting the text as necessary, and will have good reason to control it in its entirety. This is one of the reasons that is given by publishers that says, for these reasons, it makes it easy for us to have complete copyright over your work. And that's why they insist that you assign all the copyright to them. And a sign of copyright must be in writing and signed by the copyright owner to take effect. And another one is, does my employer own copyright in my work? It depends on the nature of your work and your employment contract. According to the Copyright Act, the author of the work owns copyright except in certain circumstances. The relevant ones here being if the author is under a contract of service or apprenticeship. If, for example, you are commissioned by somebody to, say, take photographs or draw illustrations, your contract will mandate that once you're done with that, you may be credited as the author of the creator of the work, but your employer is the one who has a copyright in that work. So that is also one of the things that people should be aware of. That a contract of service means you're signing your copyright to your employer. In academic context, this could mean that what the lecturer writes as part of his teaching or research, which is as specifically the contract of a study guides, for example, belong to the university. And for students, all ETDs are copyright of the university. And should students want to commercialize their work, they can reach out to the technical transfer office. Upon completion, students will have to submit their work to be placed on the IR. So basically, I think one of the confusions that comes up that if students come back to the university and say, why is my work available online? I didn't give permission to the university to do this. Is because they actually have, as part of being a student at the university, to actually sign over your copyright to the university. So sometimes they see the thesis and dissertation of the institutional repository and assume that it's been published without their knowledge. Okay, students can also request an embargo should they want to publish their research outputs or articles, books, conference papers that make part of the ETDs. And upon publishing their arrows, this will be made available online. So and the embargo can be, for example, between 2 to 5 years, depending on how long it will take you to write your article. For example, if you want to take part of your dissertation and publish parts of it as a chapter in a journal, and it will take you, say, 2 years to do that, then there will be an embargo on your thesis before it goes into the institutional repository. So that will give you time to be able to exploit your work commercially and also to improve upon it and create more work out of it. So it is not automatic that once you've submitted your work to the IR, it will be automatically loaded on the system. Okay, I want to also explain a bit about how the University of Johannesburg Institutional Repository functions. Okay, it promotes the visibility of the academic innovation at the university. It also helps with promoting the research output of the university. For example, thesis and dissertation, as already mentioned, or once a student has finished their dissertations and they've graduated, before they can graduate, their thesis or dissertation has to be submitted into the institutional repository. And then from there, it will be made publicly available. Conference papers, these are for conference papers written by academics or students, journal articles, book or book chapters, and other research data is also in the IR. Also data citation, the bibliographical trail, connecting and publishing and supporting data. This demonstrates the impact of your work because this is how the repository assists in promoting your work. And also it contributes to the scholarly record. And the citation makes it easier to find data sets. It also encourages the reuse of data for new research and discoveries, and also increases transparency and reproducibility of the work. And also on open access, as Vikas already mentioned, there are different types of open access licenses that are available. But I want to focus mainly on how the university, the library can assist with with open access publishing by students and researchers. I think that you guys already mentioned what open access is, so I'll skip this bit here. The NRF has an open access mandate, published in January 2015, and research papers generated from research fully or partially funded by the NRF when submitting or publishing in academic journals should be deposited. The final peer-reviewed manuscripts that have been accepted by the journal to the international repository with an embargo period of no more than 12 months. So this is the NRF statement on open access and the benefits of open access. Open access is a publishing model that makes research available for readers at no cost. There are a number of different models within open access publishing. Although the no cost must be qualified, as Vikas already mentioned, there are certain costs or APCs, as we call them at the university, that have to be that are charged. Basically, the APC is a processing charge that the author has to pay the publisher for that article to be published in their journal. The Diamond model is similar to Gold Open Access, except that the journal does not charge any APCs because the cost of the open access has been subsidized. The Guild Open Access, also known as self-archiving, where the author shares their accepted manuscript in a repository following any embargo period required by the publisher. I think with Green Open Access, usually they allow the author to publish their own manuscript. This is the manuscript that has been peer-reviewed but has not yet been formatted for publication by the journal. So once it's been accepted and peer-reviewed, the process gone through, you can actually self-archive. Most journals allow Green Open Access. Okay, I think it was mentioned during by Rowena that if you publish part of your patents before you register it to be in the public domain. However, in copyright, the public domain means that the work has no copyright of any kind in it. There are no restrictions and you do not need permission to use it. So basically, it means anyone can do anything they want to do. They can commercialize it, they can sell it, they can change it in any manner they want. Traditional copyright means that there are limitations and all work is original and protected under copyright. And to use it, you have to get permission before you can go ahead and use it. Creative Commons, on the other hand, gives you permission without you get permission without first contacting the creator of the work. Basically, it gives you the go ahead. You don't have to clear it first with the work. However, there are also limitations how you can reuse that work. Okay. Basically, the Creative Commons are a series of licenses. Are the part of the Creative Commons Corporation, a not-for-profit organization founded in 2001 and currently based at the Stanford University Law School. The type of licenses, the most permissive ones is the attribution only. This one also, all you have to do is acknowledge the original author, and then you can use it as you see fit. You can even commercialize it. Otherwise, attribution share alike, it allows derivative works under the same license or similar license. So if you use it and change it, you also have to use the same license. You cannot change the license. You have to share it with others using the same license. Attribution, no derivatives. This one means that you attribute the author, but you cannot change the work. You have to share it as you found it. So if for a lot of journals, I think a lot of journals also use this one, where you can download it, share it with other people, but you cannot add or also make any addition to the work. And also our ETDs are published with a similar license. People can download, share with others, make copies, print them out, but they cannot rework them and make them different from the way they source them. And attribution, no commercial means you can attribute, but you cannot commercialize the work. Basically, you cannot sell the work. You actually have to also make it available to others for free. Attribution and commercial share alike. This one also is, I think, self-explanatory. You cannot commercialize the work, but also you have to share it using the same license. Attribution and commercials and no derivatives. This one, there's no commercial commercialization of the work, and also you cannot change it. The important thing to know with open access license, even though they allow you to use the work without first contacting the corporate owner, it's important to realize that it's still a license, and by agreeing to use that word, you have to follow the license. It doesn't mean you can do as it is because you have not gotten permission from the owner. So those licenses are important. So if you use it and people have found that they've actually used it incorrectly, there can be legal repercussions for that. So make sure that you actually obey or stay straight with the license agreement that you agree to whenever you download or you reuse a work that is published under open access. Okay. If students or colleagues want to publish, where can they publish with open access? Okay. There are 4 factors to consider when deciding where to publish between open access or traditional journal. Many researchers struggle with decision whether to publish in an open access journal versus a traditional or perhaps a more well-established journal. The visibility, publishing your article in an open access journal means that more people are likely to see it and access it. Your data will be available to educators and the general public, most of whom do not have access to expensive journal subscription. For example, a lot of people on the African continent struggle with affordability when it comes to journals and cost. Both traditional and open access journals may charge a small fee at the time of submission to cover editorial and peer-reviewed related costs. The difference arises in their post-acceptance fees. Publishing a traditional subscription based on a user-pays model means that you as an author do not pay to publish your manuscript in a journal. It may take some time for your article to be appeared in a journal, depending on the frequency issues in a year or publication in a given year. And a journal will ask you to pay article processing charges if you're not part of the UJ open access publishing deals. Okay, I think that if you want to publish in an open access journal, the library can help you to let you be aware that there are certain journals and publishers that have an agreement with the library that staff can make use of, because we get discounts from there. So instead of paying the full fee to publish in those journals, there's a certain discount that you can do, and then you can access it through the library website. So you can contact one of, I think, information librarians will be able to help and assist you to know which journals are actually part of those agreement fees, so that we can avoid having to pay those exorbitant fees that sometimes you cannot, if you feel that you cannot afford a fee because it's too high. Just make sure you ask all the information librarians to assist to see if you can find a way to get a discount for publishing in a journal. In summary, when choosing between an OA and a traditional journal, it's important to consider the journal's visibility, the cost of publication, the impact factor or prestige of the journal, and the speed of publication. And due to the many high IF journals to choose from the biological and legal sciences, publication in OA journal may be a good option for research in those areas. Research analysts may lean more towards traditional publishing. I think Baker's already mentioned that in the humanities, because it's mainly books that are published or monographs, people tend to publish more traditionally than open access journals. Okay. Maximizes the access to research finding, increases the research impact to avoid the researchership, express knowledge shared across scientific field, and make your research output more visible to researchers elsewhere, and make research from elsewhere more accessible. And university researchers cannot afford to subscribe to a fraction of those journals. That means that research having only a fraction of its potential usage and impact. And also this increases the citation impact of the author, and over time increases the journal impact factor. As I already mentioned, we have publisher deals. These are some of the publishers that the university has dealt with. So if you want to publish in any of this, you can contact the library, and they should be able to assist you in making sure that you take advantage of that deal to make sure that you can get that discount when publishing, when paying for the APCs. Okay, 20% of each faculty book budget is allocated for research to publish in an open access journal. And the UJ library and each faculty have a system to implement the request. Please talk to your supervisor if you have a selected journal, and then they can help you with making sure that it is the correct journal for your research, and ensure that the journal is not predatory. And there's you can check this link to check. It has some. It's not exhaustive. There might be a few journals that are not part of the link, but it actually has a lot of journals that are considered predatory and could be helped. But also be aware that a lot of new journals spring up all the time. If one journal is identified as predatory, they can change their name, their branding, and then also appear again. So always be careful and make sure that you check that the journal is actually a legitimate journal. Okay, it's the responsibility of the researcher to avoid journals with possible predatory practices, and you can think, check, submit to make sure that you identify trusted publisher for your research through a range of tools and practice resources. This internal cross-sector initiative aim to educate, research, promote integrity, and build trust in credible research and publications. Okay, this is the link that you can use to click on it and to check if the journal you want to publish it is actually legitimate or suspicious. Okay, thank you. I think that is for all from my side. If there are any questions, I'll be willing to take them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tapelo, for a very insightful presentation on copyright as well as open access. I really appreciate your insight and expertise on that presentation. If there is any questions from the participants, please, the floor is open. For questions, you may raise your hand, you may type them in the chat box, and we may indicate to the presenter, as we also see Mr. Vikas is still here. If you do have any questions for him or Mr. Tapelo, then they will be able to facilitate the questions. Thank you. Then I believe Mr. Tapelo was very clear because I don't see any questions at all. I believe he was very clear in that presentation. I don't see any questions in the chat box. No hands raised by the attendees or any comments that you would like to give to our facilitators. Just to add there, just to see maybe if there's any extra question, I just wanted to add on the evaluation link that I've added, as I've indicated in the beginning, that this will also ensure that all the participants get a certificate of attendance for this particular workshop. So I would kindly ask all of you to please fill it out and also to provide all these amazing comments that you are providing in the chat section to actually fill them out in the evaluation form. And I will also as well send an email to our facilitators to request her presentation slides. And as I've indicated in the beginning, together with the workshop recording, as I have recorded the session, and so they will both be posted on our model communities for access to all the attendees. So in that regard, if there is no any further questions, once again, thank you so much to you, Mr. Tapelo, and thank you so much again to you, Mr. Vikas, and Mr. Rueda and Ms. Rueda for this very insightful presentation on copyrights, intellectual property, and open access publishing. We really appreciate it so much, and I'm sure the participants here, all the students and all the colleagues have definitely taken a thing or two based on this insightful presentation. In that regard, if there isn't any further questions or any further comments, I would like to ask from our facilitators if I may end the session, or is there anything that you'd like to add before we end the session? There is a question rather in the chat box which says, with the rise of AI, am I interested to know what safeguards UJ has in place?
I can comment. So for different applications, there will be different safeguards. So one, with the use of AI in submissions of assignments and things like that, screening is done when assignments are submitted. But then also the lecturers are aware and can see and can point out where AI has been used, even when humanizers have been used. So in terms of submissions by students, there is vigilance about that, but also we know that students are very crafty and sometimes try to subvert these measures. And it's also a moving target. As new AI comes out, new applications come out, and new ways of subventing the original safeguards come out. So it's continual vigilance by all of the lecturers, and the same with publishers. Publishers are finding a lot of unethical behavior by authors who submit completely AI-written manuscripts for publication. And we have safeguards in place to pick up AI-generated content, to pick up plagiarism, and also in our peer review process, it's picked up. People see that it's been generated by AI, even when using a humanizer. So we're finding a lot of unethical behavior, and it's very concerning. So please, from your side, do not submit AI-written papers, do not submit AI-written chapters, do not submit AI-written books. It will be picked up, and your reputation is on the line. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vikas, on clarifying on that question. So as I have indicated in the beginning, that also we have launched our research capacity development management system, as we will be phasing out the workshops on Teams to moving over to our research capacity management system. So I have posted a QR code on the chat. So I kindly ask all the participants to please scan in on that code, and it will take you straight to our research capacity development management system, and you can register with your UJ valid email address. And if you do have any errors or any issues with the registration, please kindly email us at rcdinquiries@uj.ac.za, and we will be able to assist you further regarding that. And also, I realized that some people also, when they're doing registration, it would have reflected that you already have an existing account. So also, if you do experience such issues, please just kindly email us, and we will delete the existing account on the system, and you should be able to register with your UJ valid email address. So without any further ado, thank you so much again, Mr. Vikas and Mr. Tapelo, for this very insightful presentation. And we really, really, really appreciate you. And just a comment, they says, thank you so much. UJ being #1 research university, this is important, great to know. Thank you. Thank you so much for all the insightful presentation. Just comments from our participants there. So I don't know if there's any further comments from our facilitators before I end the session, or if there's anything that you'd like to add before I end the session.
None from my side.
None from me as well.
Okay. In that regard, once again, thank you so much to all the attendees, and thank you so much to our facilitators. We really, really appreciate you, and thank you so much for supporting the research capacity development. And see you soon, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.